The birthday party was exactly what you'd expect from my older brother, Julian. His sprawling Manhattan penthouse glittered with custom lighting that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see champagne towers, professionally catered hors d'oeuvres, and about 60 people dressed in what Julian's circle considered casual luxury. The type of casual that requires 3 hours of preparation and a personal stylist on speed dial. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I had dressed for the occasion, a simple black dress that had eaten up most of my month's budget. I wasn't flush with cash back then. I had spent everything I had on my startup, a situation my family found both embarrassing and incomprehensible. Why would anyone give up a promising career in finance to build some app thing in a cramped apartment? That was the question that hung between us at every family gathering. "I'm sorry, Ms. Reyes," the doorman said, not meeting my eyes. He was new. I didn't recognize him. "Your name isn't on the list." "There must be a mistake," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's my brother's birthday. I'm his sister." The doorman's eyes flicked past me, and I turned to see Emily, Julian's girlfriend of 3 years, gliding toward us. Her expression was a perfect mask of artificial concern. "Sophia," she said, her voice dripping with rehearsed sympathy. "I thought Julian called you." "Called me about what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "About the change of plans," she said, waving her hand dismissively. The party became a networking event for Julian's investors. It's strictly business contacts only. Family night is tomorrow. The lie was so transparent, it was almost impressive. Through the door, I could see my parents laughing with my aunt and uncle. My cousins were there. Even my grandmother, who rarely left her nursing home, was sitting in a place of honor near the window. "My parents are in there," I said flatly. Emily's smile tightened just a fraction. "They're also investors, darling. You know how it is." I did know how it was. I had become the family embarrassment, the daughter who'd walked away from a 6-figure salary at Morgan Stanley to pursue a pipe dream. The sister who couldn't afford to contribute to family gifts anymore. The niece who wore the same outfit to 2 holiday gatherings in a row. Julian is busy with important people. "Right now," Emily continued, lowering her voice to a stage whisper, "it would really be better if you came back another time, when things are less professional." Before I could respond, the door swung open wider, and my brother appeared, champagne flute in hand. His expression shifted microscopically when he saw me: surprise, discomfort, and then resolution. "Soph," he said, already using the diminutive nickname I hated. It was his way of infantilizing me, reminding everyone I was the baby sister who didn't know any better. "Didn't you get my message?" "Apparently not," I replied. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. The muffled sounds of laughter and music continued without interruption. No one inside seemed to notice or care that the birthday boy had momentarily stepped away. "Look," he said, dropping the polite pretense. "Harrison Maxwell is in there." He said the name like I should immediately understand everything. When I didn't react, he continued, exasperated. "The venture capitalist? The guy who just closed a $500 million fund? Dad finally got him to agree to a meeting, and he's introducing me as his successor at the firm." I nodded slowly. "And I can't be there because the last time you were at a family event, you spent 30 minutes talking about your app idea to Mom's friend from the country club." It was embarrassing, Sophia. You sounded desperate. The words hit like a physical blow. I had been passionate, yes. Excited to share my vision with someone who'd shown genuine interest. But desperate? Is that how they saw me? "I'm trying to protect you," Julian continued, his voice softening into what he probably thought was kindness. These people are sharks. They'd eat you alive right now. Come back when you've got something real to show for yourself. Something real. As if the 18-hour days, the coding until my eyes burned, the investor meetings where I was talked over and dismissed, as if none of that was real, because it hadn't produced a multi-million-dollar exit yet. "Julian," Emily called from the doorway, her voice honeyed but insistent. "Harrison was asking about your experience in emerging markets." My brother straightened his bespoke suit jacket, instantly shifting back into the role of heir apparent. "I've got to go. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? We'll do lunch, just the two of us." He wouldn't call. We both knew it. As the door closed in my face, I stood there for a moment, listening to the celebration continue without even a hiccup. Through the window, I could see my father clapping Harrison Maxwell on the back, both men laughing. My mother was showing something on her phone to a group of women, all of them nodding appreciatively. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Not one of them looked toward the door. Not one of them wondered where I was. I turned and walked to the elevator, my heels clicking against the marble floor. I had taken the subway to get here, budgeting carefully for the return trip and a small birthday gift I now realized Julian would never open. As I waited for the elevator, I pulled out my phone, an older model with a cracked screen that I couldn't afford to replace yet, and made a call. "Maya?" "It's me," I said when my co-founder answered. "I'm coming back to the office. We're going to finish the pitch deck tonight." "It's almost 9 p.m., Maya replied, concern in her voice. "I thought you were at your brother's party." "Change of plans," I said, stepping into the elevator. "And Maya? Let's add the predictive algorithm integration to the roadmap. The one we thought was too ambitious for the first version. That would take months of additional development," she cautioned. "Then we better get started," I replied as the elevator doors closed. What my family never understood, what Julian and Emily and my parents couldn't see, was that rejection is the most powerful fuel there is. Each dismissal, each closed door, each pitying look only made the fire burn hotter. As I rode the subway back downtown, watching the lights of the city blur past, I made myself a promise. One day, they would all be begging for an invitation to my table. And on that day, I would remember exactly how it felt to be standing outside, looking in. To understand how I went from being locked out of my brother's birthday to owning an island, where I would eventually host them all, you need to understand what happened in the 3 years between those moments. You need to understand the garage. Not a literal garage. This is Manhattan after all, but the startup equivalent. A co-working space that was really just an abandoned floor of a building in the garment district with questionable heating and a bathroom that worked about 60% of the time. The landlord had given us a break on the rent because the previous tenants had been busted for running an illegal gambling operation, and there were still police tape outlines on some of the walls. Maya Rodriguez, my co-founder and the only person who truly believed in our vision from day one, called it the dungeon. It's where we built HealthSync from nothing but code and caffeine. The idea had come to me during my time at Morgan Stanley. I'd noticed how antiquated the healthcare record systems were while helping my grandmother navigate her cancer treatments. Doctors couldn't easily share information, insurance companies demanded endless redundant paperwork, and patients were left trying to make sense of it all while dealing with illness. There had to be a better way, a secure platform that could integrate these fragmented systems while giving patients control over their own data. When I pitched the concept to my family, my father had laughed. "Healthcare? You know nothing about healthcare. Stay in your lane, Sophia." My lane, according to Philip Reyes, was following in his footsteps. He'd spent 30 years building Reyes Financial into a respected wealth management firm, and he'd always made it clear that Julian would take over the family business while I would handle client relations. My role had been decided without my consultation, my future mapped without my input. So when I quit Morgan Stanley to start HealthSync, it wasn't just a career change, it was an act of rebellion. My father took it as a personal betrayal. My mother, Carolyn, treated it as a phase, something I needed to get out of my system before returning to the fold. Julian simply found it amusing, the way one might find a child's crayon drawing endearingly naive. In the dungeon, none of that mattered. Maya and I worked until our fingers cramped and our eyes burned. We subsisted on ramen and the cheapest coffee we could find. I moved out of my comfortable Upper East Side apartment into a tiny studio in Bushwick with 4 roommates to cut expenses. Every penny went back into the company. We had some early small investors, friends from college, former colleagues who believed in the vision, but nothing substantial. Each pitch meeting with serious VCs ended the same way. Interesting. Away from the social pressures of Manhattan, she revealed a sharp mind for design thinking that had been instrumental in several of Julian's projects, contributions that had gone uncredited in the name of maintaining his image as the family genius. By Sunday afternoon, as we gathered for a final lunch on the deck, the atmosphere had transformed. Not into the warm family reunion of Hollywood movies. We had too much history, too many wounds for that kind of miracle, but into something approaching mutual respect. As they prepared to board the boat back to the mainland, my father pulled me aside. "The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss your offer," he said. "I won't oppose it." I studied his face, looking for signs of resentment or manipulation. I found only resignation and perhaps a glimmer of relief. "What will you do?" I asked. He looked out at the island, the house, the evidence of what his daughter had built. "I don't know. For the first time in 40 years, I don't have a 5-year plan." A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "It's terrifying and a little exhilarating." The acquisition was finalized 3 weeks later. Reyes Financial became Health Wealth, a division of HealthSync focused on financial planning for healthcare professionals and institutions. Julian, to everyone's surprise, declined a position within the new structure. Instead, he joined a nonprofit focused on bringing healthcare technology to underserved communities, a role that paid a fraction of his former salary, but, as he told me over coffee months later, finally let him sleep at night. My parents sold their Upper East Side apartment and bought a small house in Vermont. My father started writing a memoir about Wall Street's evolution through the decades. My mother, freed from the constraints of Manhattan society, discovered a passion for landscape photography. As for me, I kept the island. I still go there when I need to think, to reset, to remember where I came from and what it took to get here. Sometimes Maya joins me, sometimes Dr. Vega or Alexandra. Sometimes Julian, who is slowly, cautiously becoming, if not the brother I always wanted, at least a person I can respect. The company continues to grow. HealthSync is now implemented in hospital systems across all 50 states, with international expansion underway. Our valuation has surpassed $800 million, and there's talk of an IPO in the near future. The girl, who wasn't allowed into her brother's birthday party, now leads a company that is quite literally saving lives. But success isn't measured in valuations or magazine covers or even private islands. Success is waking up every morning with purpose. It's building something that matters. It's knowing your worth isn't determined by other people's perceptions. And family? Real family isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's defined by who stands beside you when it matters. Who believes in you when belief is all you have to offer in return. I look back at that night, standing outside Julian's penthouse, watching the celebration through the window, and I feel gratitude. Not for the rejection that will always hurt, but for the clarity it provided. For showing me exactly who I could rely on myself and what I was capable of achieving without. The safety net of family approval. Sometimes, being forced to stand on your own is the greatest gift you can receive. It's in those moments of isolation that you discover your true strength, your real voice, and the path that was always meant to be yours. So if you're watching this from a place of rejection, from outside looking in, know this: the table you build for yourself will always be more meaningful than the one you beg to join. And when the time comes to send out invitations, you'll remember exactly how it felt to be left outside in the cold. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reaches you wherever you are. Family is complicated, success is personal, and your worth is inherent, not bestowed by others, but recognized by you alone. To understand why being locked out of Julian's birthday party became the catalyst for my entire journey, you need to understand what I call the crucible, the 2-year period where I forged HealthSync from nothing but determination and spite. Most startup stories romanticize the struggle. They talk about garage days with a nostalgic glow, as if eating ramen and sleeping under your desk is some charming rite of passage. Let me be clear, there was nothing romantic about it. It was brutal, demeaning, and at times nearly broke me. Our first office wasn't just humble, it was hazardous. The co-working space in the garment district that Maya and I could afford had exposed wiring, unreliable plumbing, and windows that leaked when it rained. During winter, we worked wearing fingerless gloves and parkas. During summer, the ancient air conditioner sputtered and died regularly, leaving us to code in sweltering heat. We called it the pit, a half-joke that acknowledged both the physical conditions and the emotional state of working there. Other startups came and went, their founders giving up after a few months of hardship. Maya and I remained, too stubborn or too desperate to admit defeat. The Reyes family name, which had opened doors for me my entire life, suddenly became a liability. When potential investors realized I was Philip Reyes's daughter, they'd immediately ask why I wasn't getting family funding. My father believes in traditional investments, I'd say diplomatically, which was code for, he thinks this is a foolish waste of time. Their expressions would shift, subtle but unmistakable. If her own family won't invest, why should we? The unspoken question hung in the air at every pitch meeting. 3 months after Julian's birthday party, I hit what I thought was rock bottom. Then I discovered that rock bottom has a basement. It was a Thursday when our main server crashed. Maya and I had been running on 4 hours of sleep for days, racing to complete a demo for a potential investor. I had spent my last dollars on upgraded cloud storage rather than paying my share of the rent. My roommates were growing increasingly hostile, leaving passive-aggressive notes about utility bills and refrigerator space. When the server went down, taking with it weeks of work, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply sat in my chair, staring at the error messages flooding my screen, feeling a cold numbness spread through my body. "We can rebuild it," Maya said, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. "I have some backups from last week. It's not all gone." I nodded mechanically, but inside, a treacherous voice was growing louder. Maybe they were right. Maybe this is just a pipe dream. Maybe you should swallow your pride and go back to Morgan Stanley. That night, as Maya finally went home to get a few hours of sleep, I remained in the pit, surrounded by the ghosts of my ambition. I called the one person who had always been my safe harbor, my grandmother Elise. She had been the first person to truly see me, not as Philip Reyes's daughter, or Julian's little sister, but as Sophia, the girl who took apart her calculator at age 7 to see how it worked. She had bought me my first computer when my parents insisted I focus on more ladylike pursuits. She had slipped me books on coding and engineering while my father pushed finance textbooks my way, and now she was dying. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The prognosis was measured in months, not years. "Sophia," she answered, her once strong voice now wispy and thin. "It's late, sweetheart. Is everything all right? I tried to lie, to protect her from my struggles, but she had always seen through my pretenses. The server crashed, I admitted. We lost weeks of work, and I think maybe everyone was right about me. There was a long silence, broken only by the sound of her labored breathing. Do you remember when you were 9? She finally said. And you entered the science fair? I did. I had built a rudimentary solar-powered water filtration system. It was clunky and inefficient. But it worked. You were so proud, she continued. You had worked on it for weeks. And then Julian knocked it over the night before. The memory was still bitter. Julian, then 11, had been roughhousing with his friends. My project was collateral damage. He didn't mean to, I said automatically, repeating what my parents had insisted at the time. Perhaps not, my grandmother conceded, but what matters is what you did next. You stayed up all night rebuilding it. Not because you thought you would win, the damage was too extensive for that, but because you refused to show up empty-handed. I remembered that night, the desperate rush to salvage what I could, tears streaming down my face as I worked. You've always been a builder, Sophia, she said softly. When things fall apart, you put them back together. It's who you are. The simplicity of her faith in me broke something open inside my chest. I felt the numbness recede, replaced by a painful but necessary clarity. The healthcare system is broken, Grandma, I whispered. Someone needs to fix it. Yes, she agreed. And why not you? After we hung up, I sat motionless for several minutes, her words echoing in my mind. Then I opened my laptop and began to rebuild our lost work, line by painstaking line. 3 weeks later, my grandmother was rushed to the hospital. A miscommunication between her oncologist and primary care physician had resulted in a dangerous medication interaction. By the time the error was caught, organ damage had begun. I was with her when she died, holding her frail hand as the monitors flatlined. My parents arrived 30 minutes later, having been in the Hamptons for a charity event. Julian sent flowers but was too swamped with client meetings to visit the hospital. Into the problem, the fragmentation of healthcare information, the burden it placed on providers, the danger it posed to patients. My grandmother died because her doctors couldn't effectively share information, I said bluntly. She's not an anomaly, she's the rule. I moved through the slides quickly, focusing on the human cost of the broken system and our vision for rebuilding it. I didn't hide the challenges or downplay the resources required. I laid out the mountain we needed to climb in all its daunting detail. When I reached the final slide, I paused, making eye contact with Alexandra. We're not here pretending this is an easy win or a quick return on investment. We're here because healthcare needs a fundamental redesign, and we're committed to creating it. The question is whether you want to be part of that change, or just another investor who missed the opportunity. The silence that followed was excruciating. Alexandra's expression remained unchanged, giving away nothing. Finally, she spoke. Your timeline is unrealistic. Your budget is inadequate. Your team is too small. My heart sank, but I kept my expression neutral. And yet, she continued, this is the first honest healthcare pitch I've heard in years. She leaned forward, her gaze intensifying. Everyone else comes in here talking about disruption while designing products that reinforce the status quo. You're actually proposing to rebuild the foundation. It's probably impossible. A small smile appeared. But I've built my career on betting on the impossible. 2 weeks later, we signed the term sheet. $2, $5 million for 15% of the company and a seat on our board. It wasn't the largest seed round in history, but it was enough to move out of the pit, hire a small team of developers, and give ourselves 18 months to prove our concept. The moment the funds hit our account, Maya and I stood in the pit for the last time, looking around at the space that had nearly broken us and ultimately forged us. We should do something symbolic, Maya suggested. Burn sage or break a bottle of champagne or something. I considered the idea, then walked to my desk and picked up the framed photo of my family from my college graduation, the only personal item I had kept in the office. In it, we looked like the perfect family. My father proud, my mother elegant, Julian successful, me still part of their narrative. I removed the photo from the frame and tore it in half, then quarters, then smaller still, until it was confetti. Then I dropped the pieces into the trash can. Now we can go, I said. With funding came new challenges. We had to build a real company, not just a product. We needed processes, policies, a company culture. We had to learn to manage people, to delegate, to communicate our vision to those who hadn't been there from the beginning. I made mistakes, hiring too quickly, micromanaging, failing to establish clear expectations. There were nights I called Maya in tears, convinced I was destroying everything we had built. There were mornings I woke up with such crushing anxiety that getting out of bed felt impossible. But unlike my family, who had only ever seen my potential for failure, my team saw my potential for growth. They didn't expect perfection. They expected effort and honesty. When I failed, they helped me learn. When I struggled, they stepped up. 6 months after securing funding, we launched our pilot program at a small community health clinic in Queens. It was limited in scope, just appointment scheduling and basic patient records, but it worked. The clinic reported a 30% reduction in administrative time and a significant decrease in scheduling errors. It wasn't revolutionary yet, but it was a start. We expanded to 3 more clinics, refining the system based on real-world feedback. Elena's expertise proved invaluable, helping us understand the workflows and pain points of healthcare providers. Maya's brilliant engineering solutions made the system intuitive and reliable. And I learned to be a CEO not by mimicking my father's authoritarian style or Julian's charm offensive, but by developing my own approach based on transparency, collaboration, and unwavering commitment to our mission. A year after securing funding, we were invited to present our preliminary results at a healthcare innovation conference. Elena, with her academic credibility, was the obvious choice to represent us. She delivered a data-driven presentation showing how our system had reduced administrative burden, decreased medication errors, and improved patient satisfaction across our pilot sites. The response was beyond our expectations. Healthcare administrators approached us, eager to discuss potential partnerships. Physicians asked when the system would be available at their facilities. A representative from Medicare expressed interest in a pilot program for their providers. That night, as we celebrated in a hotel bar, Elena raised her glass in a toast to Sophia, who refused to accept that the system couldn't be fixed. I shook my head, uncomfortable with the singular recognition. To all of us, this is a team achievement. Of course it is, Elena agreed. But teams need leaders, and leaders need vision. You had the vision when everyone else, including me, thought it was impossible. I thought about my family then, about how desperately I had once wanted their approval. I realized with startling clarity that I no longer needed it. I had found my people, not bound by blood, but by shared purpose. My true family. The breakthrough that catapulted HealthSync from promising startup to industry disruptor came unexpectedly. A series of ransomware attacks hit major hospital systems across the East Coast, encrypting patient records and demanding millions in payment. Hospitals were forced to revert to paper records, cancel non-emergency procedures, and in some cases divert patients to other facilities. Except for the hospitals in our expanded pilot program, our decentralized architecture and advanced encryption had protected their data. They remained operational while others floundered. The contrast was stark and undeniable. News outlets picked up the story. Small startups' technology withstands cyberattack that crippled major hospitals, read one headline. The future of healthcare. Security? Asked another. Overnight, we went from being an interesting innovation to an essential solution. Our phones didn't stop ringing. Investors who had previously dismissed us now pursued us aggressively. Hospital systems that had been hesitant to change their established workflows suddenly saw the cost of maintaining the status quo. In the midst of this whirlwind, I received a text from Julian. Saw the news about HealthSync. Impressive. Let's get lunch. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Part of me, the wounded younger sister who had been locked out of his party, wanted to ignore it. Another part, the CEO who now understood the value of strategic relationships, recognized the potential advantages of reconnecting with my family. But it was a third part that ultimately made the decision, the part of me that had been forged in the pit, that had learned to evaluate relationships based on their authenticity rather than utility. I typed a simple reply, "Thank you. I'm fully booked for the foreseeable future." Then I turned off my phone and went back to building something that mattered. The next 2 years were a blur of growth, challenges, and increasingly visible success. We closed a Series B funding round of $45 million, expanded our team to over 100 people, and moved into proper offices in Midtown. Our system was implemented in hospital networks across 12 states. My name began appearing in tech publications and healthcare journals. Through it all, I held tight to the lessons of the pit, that genuine relationships matter more than strategic ones, that purpose must drive profit rather than the reverse, that the hardest path often leads to the most meaningful destination. And I never forgot what it felt like to stand outside my brother's door, watching my family celebrate without me. That memory became not a wound to nurse, but a compass to guide me. It reminded me always to create a table where everyone who contributed was welcome, regardless of title or background or pedigree. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Concept, but come back when you have more traction. Or worse, the patronizing. Have you considered bringing on a more experienced CEO? 3 months after being turned away from Julian's birthday party, I hit rock bottom. Our main server crashed, taking 2 weeks of work with it. One of our early angel investors pulled out, citing concerns about our runway. And my grandmother, the very woman who had inspired HealthSync, passed away after a complication with her medication. Exactly the kind of error our system was designed to prevent. I sat alone in the dungeon at 2 a.m., surrounded by empty energy, drink cans and half-eaten takeout containers. Maya had finally gone home to get some sleep, but I couldn't bear the thought of returning to my apartment, where the walls were thin enough to hear my roommate's pity whispers about that startup girl who's going to fail. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Julian's firm closed the Maxwell deal today. $20 million. Family dinner Sunday to celebrate. Wear something nice. No condolences about grandma. No questions about how I was doing. Just another celebration of Julian's success and a reminder to dress appropriately so as not to embarrass them. I threw my phone across the room, watching as the already cracked screen shattered completely against the wall. In that moment of destruction, something in me crystallized. A cold, hard clarity washed over me. I wasn't going to beg for their approval anymore. I wasn't going to contort myself to fit into their vision of success. I was going to build something so undeniably brilliant that they would be forced to recognize it. Not for their validation. I realized I no longer needed that, but to prove to myself that I had been right all along. That night, sleeping on the office couch, I dreamed of an island. Not a metaphorical one, but a real place, sun-drenched and isolated, where I answered to no one, where I made the rules, where I decided who was welcome and who remained outside, looking in. When Maya arrived the next morning, she found me already at my computer, coding furiously. "You look terrible," she said, placing a fresh coffee beside me, "but also different." "I figured it out," I replied, not looking up from the screen. "We've been trying to create a system that integrates with all the existing healthcare infrastructure, but the infrastructure itself is the problem. We need to rebuild it from the ground up." "That's ambitious," Maya said carefully. I finally looked at her, a smile spreading across my face. "It's not ambitious, it's necessary, and I know exactly who can help us." That person was Dr. Elena Vega, a renowned healthcare systems expert who had published a series of scathing articles about the inefficiencies in medical record keeping. I'd been following her work for months, but had been too intimidated to reach out. Now, with nothing left to lose, I sent her our prototype and a heartfelt email about my grandmother. She responded within hours. "This is rough, unpolished, and missing key components. But it's also the most innovative approach I've seen in years. Let's talk." Dr. Vega didn't just talk, she joined our team, bringing with her decades of expertise and, more importantly, credibility. Suddenly, the doors that had been firmly shut began to crack open. Her name got us meetings. Her endorsement made investors listen. One of those investors was Alexandra Chun, a former healthcare executive who had recently launched her own fund focused specifically on medical technology. She didn't just see HealthSync as a good investment. She saw it as a necessary evolution in patient care. "I'll give you $2.5 million for 15%, she said after our third meeting. "But I want to see a working pilot program in 6 months. It wasn't a massive amount by Silicon Valley standards, but it was enough. Enough to move out of the dungeon into a real office. Enough to hire 3 more developers and a healthcare compliance specialist. Enough to stop eating ramen for every meal." I didn't tell my family about the investment. Not when we launched our pilot program with a small community health center in Queens. Not when that pilot expanded to 3 more clinics. Not when Dr. Vega presented our preliminary results at a healthcare innovation conference and received a standing ovation. Let them think I was still failing. Let them believe I was too stubborn to admit defeat. Let them continue their Sunday dinners celebrating Julian's conventional success, while I quietly built something revolutionary. The breakthrough came 14 months after that night in the dungeon. A ransomware attack hit 3 major hospital systems on the East Coast, encrypting their patient records and demanding millions in payment. The hospitals that used traditional systems were crippled, forced to revert to paper records and cancel non-emergency procedures. But one small community hospital in the Bronx, part of our expanded pilot program, remained operational. HealthSync's decentralized architecture and advanced encryption had protected their data. Patients could still access their records. Doctors could still provide care. The story made national news. My phone, long since replaced but still rarely used for personal calls, suddenly wouldn't stop ringing. Investors, healthcare executives, government officials. Everyone wanted to know about the system that had withstood an attack that brought major institutions to their knees. Among those calls was one from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, the voice on the other end was eerily familiar yet distant, like hearing an echo from another life. "Sophia, it's Dad." I said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "I saw the news," he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "About your company. The hospital system that didn't go down. HealthSync," I supplied. He had never once used the company's name before. "Yes, HealthSync," he repeated, as if testing how it felt to say it aloud. "It's impressive what you've done." The compliment, meager as it was, might have once meant everything to me. Now it barely registered. "Thank you," I said simply. "Your mother and I were thinking," he continued, "perhaps you could come to dinner this Sunday." Julian has some connections in the healthcare investment space. He might be able to make some introductions for you." The audacity was almost admirable. After years of dismissal, they now saw me as potentially useful to Julian's network. "I'm afraid I can't," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "I'm meeting with the CDC director on Monday, and I need to prepare." The silence that followed was deafening. I could almost see him processing this information, recalibrating his understanding of his youngest child. "Perhaps another time," he finally said. "Perhaps," I echoed, though we both knew there wouldn't be another invitation unless it served their purposes. After that call, things accelerated at a pace that was both exhilarating and terrifying. We closed a Series B funding round of $45 million. We expanded our team to over 100 employees. We moved into offices in a sleek building in Midtown. With views of Central Park, my name began appearing in tech publications and healthcare journals. Through it all, Maya remained my rock, Dr. Vega, our moral compass, and Alexandra, our strategic guide. We built not just a company, but a family, one bound by shared vision and mutual respect, rather than blood and obligation. 2 years after being turned away from Julian's birthday, HealthSync was valued at $140 million. We had contracts with hospital systems in 12 states, partnerships with 3 major insurance providers, and a pilot program with Medicare. We were no longer scrappy upstarts. We were industry innovators. And I, the daughter who had embarrassed her family by pursuing a pipe dream, was now listed among Forbes' 30 under 35 entrepreneurs to watch. That's when I bought the island. It wasn't a spontaneous purchase born of ego or excess. It was a deliberate choice, a promise I had made to myself in the darkest moments of building HealthSync. A tangible reminder that I would never again be at the mercy of someone else's approval. The island was small, just 20 acres off the coast of Maine. It had a single modernist house perched on a rocky bluff, solar panels for electricity, a desalination system for fresh water, and a dock for the boat that served as its only connection to the mainland. I named it Refuge, though Maya jokingly called it Revenge Rock, a name that made me laugh even as I denied its accuracy. It wasn't about revenge, I insisted. It was about self-determination. I spent weekends there, often alone, sometimes with Maya or other close friends from the company. I would walk the perimeter at dawn, the cold Atlantic air filling my lungs, and marvel at how far I had come from that night in the dungeon. From the girl who wasn't welcome at her own brother's birthday party. It was during one of these solitary weekends, watching the sunrise from my deck, that I made the decision to host a gathering. Not a party, not a celebration, but a reckoning. An opportunity to close a chapter that had remained painfully open despite all my success. I sent 4 invitations, elegant, handwritten cards delivered by courier to my parents' Upper East Side apartment, Julian's penthouse, his firm's headquarters, and Emily's boutique interior design studio. You are invited to a weekend retreat on Refuge Island to celebrate the recent success of HealthSync and discuss potential family investment opportunities. Private transportation will be provided from the mainland. Please RSVP at your earliest convenience. The responses came within days. My mother called first, her voice overly bright, as if the years of estrangement had been a minor scheduling conflict rather than a fundamental rejection. "Darling, we're so thrilled about your invitation. Your father and I have been telling everyone about your little healthcare app. We always knew you would make something of yourself." Julian's response came via his assistant, a terse confirmation that he and Emily would attend, with a note about Emily's shellfish allergy and Julian's preference for a specific brand of sparkling water. 3 years earlier, their casual cruelty had nearly broken me. Now their transparent attempts to realign themselves with my success barely registered as anything more than vaguely amusing. The weekend arrived with perfect early summer weather. Clear skies, gentle breezes, temperatures warm enough for comfort, but cool enough to avoid the oppressive heat of high summer. I had arranged for a sleek yacht to bring them from the mainland, a not-so-subtle reminder of the resources now at my disposal. Standing on the dock, watching the boat approach, I felt a strange calm. These people, my so-called family, had once held such power over me. Their approval had been the currency I desperately sought. Now they were simply guests on my island, visitors in the world I had built without them. My father disembarked first, looking older than I remembered. The confident swagger I had grown up both fearing and admiring seemed diminished somehow. My mother followed, her eyes darting around the island, cataloging, assessing, already planning what anecdotes she would share at her next lunch with the girls. Julian and Emily came last, both wearing expressions of careful neutrality that didn't quite mask their discomfort at this reversal of roles. "Welcome to Refuge," I said, not moving to embrace any of them. "I trust your journey was comfortable. It's quite a place you have here," my father said, attempting to regain his footing with a compliment. "Yes," I agreed, "it is." I led them up the winding path to the house, where the staff I had hired for the weekend, a chef, 2 servers, and a concierge, awaited. The main living area, with its wall of windows overlooking the Atlantic, elicited the expected gasps of appreciation. "Sophia, this is stunning," Emily gushed, her interior designer's eye cataloging every detail. "The use of natural materials with the modern lines is just inspired." "Thank you," I replied. "The architect is a friend." She understood exactly what I wanted, a space that feels both sheltered and expansive. "Must have cost a fortune," Julian remarked, and I didn't miss the slight edge in his voice. The brother who had always had more, been more, achieved more was now standing in physical evidence of his sister's success. "Considerably less than your penthouse, actually," I replied with a small smile. "But then, I'm not paying Manhattan real estate prices." Dinner that first night was a masterpiece of subtle power dynamics. The chef prepared a 5-course meal featuring local seafood and produce from the island's greenhouse. The wine selected by a sommelier I had flown in specifically for the occasion was impeccable. The conversation remained carefully, artificially pleasant. My mother talked about her charity work. My father discussed market trends while studiously avoiding mention of HealthSync's impact on healthcare stocks. Julian spoke of a recent deal his firm had closed, smaller than his previous triumphs but presented with the same self-congratulatory flair. I let them talk, smiling and nodding at appropriate intervals, offering nothing of substance in return. I was waiting, setting the stage, building anticipation for the real purpose of this gathering. After dessert, as the staff cleared the plates and brought snifters of aged cognac, I finally leaned forward. "I imagine you're wondering why I invited you here," I said, my voice cutting through the polite chatter. "To reconnect, of course," my mother said quickly. "Family is everything, after all." I allowed myself a small, cold smile. "Is it?" I seemed to recall a different message 3 years ago. The air in the room shifted, the pretense of normalcy evaporating like morning mist under a harsh sun. "Sophia," my father began, his tone placating, "whatever misunderstandings occurred in the past." "There were no misunderstandings," I interrupted, my voice level. I was quite explicitly not welcome at Julian's birthday, at Sunday dinners, in the family narrative of success. Julian shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "That was a different time. We didn't understand what you were building." "No," I agreed. "You didn't, because you never asked. Not once did any of you inquire about my work with genuine interest. Not once did you offer support, emotional or otherwise, during the hardest years of my life." Emily, ever the diplomat, attempted to diffuse the tension. "But that's why this weekend is so wonderful. A fresh start for everyone. I turned my gaze to her, and she flinched slightly at whatever she saw in my expression. "This isn't a fresh start," I said quietly. "This is a conclusion." I reached for a folder that had been placed beside my chair and set it on the table. Inside are documents prepared by my attorneys. They outline a very generous offer for Ria's financial. My father's face went slack with shock. "What are you talking about?" "I'm buying your firm, Dad," I said simply. HealthSync is establishing a financial division focused on healthcare investment and retirement planning for medical professionals. Your client list and infrastructure would be a useful foundation. "This is absurd," my father sputtered, his face reddening. "Ria's financial is not for sale, certainly not to you." "Everything is for sale at the right price," I replied, echoing the mantra he had repeated throughout my childhood. "And my offer is significantly above market value. Your board will have a fiduciary duty to consider it seriously." I turned to Julian, whose face had drained of all color. "Of course, this would mean a significant change for you as well, Julian. The heir apparent would need to find a new kingdom to inherit." "You can't do this," he whispered. "I already have," I replied. "The offer was delivered to your board chairman this afternoon. I simply wanted the courtesy of informing you personally." My mother's hand fluttered to her throat. "Sophia, why would you do this? We're your family, are we?" I asked, genuinely curious. "What makes us family? Shared DNA?" "Because from where I stand, family supports each other. Family believes in each other. Family doesn't leave one of their own standing outside in the cold." The silence that followed was deafening. In it, I could hear the collapse of their understanding of the world. A world where I was the lesser child, the disappointing daughter, the sister who didn't know her place. "The boat will be available to take you back to the mainland in the Bayou morning," I said, rising from my chair. "Or you're welcome to stay the full weekend as planned. The choice is yours." I walked out of the dining room and onto the deck, leaving them to grapple with the new reality I just presented. The night air was cool against my skin. The sound of waves crashing against the rocks below, a soothing counterpoint to the turmoil I had just unleashed. I had expected to feel triumphant in this moment, vindicated. Instead, I felt something unexpected, a profound sadness for what could have been. For the family we might have been if ego and expectation hadn't poisoned the well. I don't know how long I stood there before I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't turn, assuming it was my mother coming to plead or my father coming to rage. Instead, it was Julian. "That night," he said, his voice lacking its usual confidence, "at my birthday, I knew it was wrong. I knew it the moment I closed the door in your face. I said nothing, waiting. I told myself it was for your own good," he continued. "That those people would have judged you, found you wanting. But the truth is, I was afraid. That made me turn." "Afraid of what?" "Of you," he admitted, not meeting my eyes. "Of what you were trying to build. It was so much bigger, so much more important than anything I was doing. Moving money from one account to another, skimming percentages off the top, it's not changing the world, it's just maintaining the status quo." He finally looked at me, and in the moonlight, I could see a vulnerability I'd never witnessed in my confident, golden boy brother. "I was afraid that if I acknowledged what you were doing, I'd have to acknowledge how empty my own achievements were." The admission hung between us, unexpected and raw. "Is that supposed to make it better?" I asked, but there was less edge in my voice than I'd intended. "No," he said simply. "Nothing makes it better. I'm just telling you because I think you deserve to know that it was never about you not being good enough. It was about me being afraid I wasn't." I turned back to the ocean, processing his words. They didn't erase the hurt, the years of exclusion and dismissal. But they shifted something in my understanding of our shared history. "I'm not withdrawing the offer," I said finally. "I know," he replied. And I'm not asking you to. Maybe it's time for something new. For all of us. We stood in silence for a while longer, two siblings on an island, surrounded by the vastness of the Atlantic, separate but, for perhaps the first time, seeing each other clearly. The rest of the weekend unfolded in ways I couldn't have predicted. My father, after his initial outrage, approached me the following morning with questions about HealthSync's business model, genuine questions that reflected actual interest rather than condescension. My mother, in a rare moment of authenticity, admitted she had followed my company's progress in secret, too proud to acknowledge her pride in my achievements. Emily, surprisingly, proved to be the most genuine of all.